Imagine waking up one morning to discover that a centuries-old tradition, an art passed down from parent to child, a symbol of national pride, and a cornerstone of your country's global reputation, is suddenly on the brink of collapse. Not because people have lost their taste for it, nor because of an economic crash, but because of the unpredictable, relentless tides of international geopolitics. For the proud producers of French cognac, this nightmare scenario is not some abstract fear. It is their new reality, playing out right now as their world-renowned spirit finds itself caught in the crossfire between the European Union and China. This is not just a story about luxury drinks or old-world prestige. It is a vivid illustration of how even the most established, seemingly untouchable industries can be swept into the maelstrom of global trade wars. The fate of a golden brandy, once reserved for the tables of kings and the salons of high society, now hangs on decisions made in distant capitals. Decisions that could redefine not just an industry, but the very landscape of global commerce itself. So, how did we arrive at this precarious moment? To truly grasp the gravity of the crisis facing French cognac, we must rewind the tape and examine the roots of today's escalating conflict. The spark was ignited when the European Union, anxious about the future of its own automotive industry, imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. European officials argued that Chinese manufacturers benefited from generous state support, allowing them to flood the market with underpriced cars, threatening European jobs and technological leadership. The move was assertive, but it was not taken in isolation. China, with its long memory and strategic mindset, was quick to retaliate. Beijing's response was not to target European cars directly. Instead, Chinese authorities set their sights on something deeply woven into French identity and European luxury: cognac. Every year, France exports hundreds of millions of euros worth of this storied spirit to China, making it one of the top overseas markets for brands like Hennessy, Martell, and Remy Martin. Over decades, the relationship between French cognac producers and Chinese consumers has deepened. Carefully crafted brand stories have enchanted China's growing middle and upper classes, who see cognac as a symbol of sophistication and success. But those bonds are now under unprecedented strain. Over the past year, French cognac exports to China have plummeted by nearly 40%, a staggering decline for an industry where margins are often thin and competition is fierce. The looming threat of permanent tariffs, which could climb as high as 39%, hangs like a storm cloud. For many small producers, these additional costs are not just challenging, they are existential threats, threatening to wipe out generations of tradition and expertise. To make matters even more complicated, China has extended what some call an olive branch, but one bristling with thorns. The offer, a substantial tax refund for cognac producers willing to cooperate with the ongoing anti-dumping investigation, and, crucially, to accept a minimum selling price determined by Chinese authorities. On the surface, this might look like a lifeline, but dig deeper, and it quickly becomes clear that the terms overwhelmingly favor industry giants, think Hennessy, Martell, and Remy Martin, while leaving smaller, family-run operations exposed and disadvantaged. Behind closed doors, diplomatic efforts have shifted into high gear. French President Emmanuel Macron has been in regular contact with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, in an effort to diffuse tensions and reach a preliminary agreement. Gabriel Picard of the French Wine and Spirits Exporters Federation has voiced cautious optimism, noting that the recent phone calls between President Macron and President Xi Jinping have helped here in reaching a preliminary agreement. Still, skepticism runs deep within the industry, as many suspect that any deal reached may merely protect the biggest brands while leaving small producers to fend for themselves. Marc-Antoine Jamet, representing some of France's largest luxury conglomerates, summed up the sentiment. Most cognac producers are small owners, and they are completely being strangled by this struggle that is out of their hands. Their fears are echoed by Lawrence Wyatt, a leading analyst at Barclays, who commented, "It wasn't clear the industry had made a major concession in the price offers seen by Reuters. The uncertainty is pervasive, and for many, hope is a scarce commodity." But why should this matter to anyone outside the rolling vineyards and storied distilleries of southwestern France? The answer lies in the intricate web of global supply chains and the profound interconnectedness of our modern economies. Cognac may appear to be a niche product, but its story is a microcosm of much larger forces at play. Trade wars, once the exclusive domain of politicians and trade negotiators, now ripple outward to affect small businesses, local communities, and even the choices of consumers living thousands of miles away. The statistics are sobering. In the year 2023, the European Union's trade deficit with China soared to nearly 291 billion euros, a figure that underscores both the depth of economic ties and the mounting tensions between the two powers. French cognac exports are just one small facet of this vast relationship, but for the families and workers whose livelihoods are tied to the spirit, the consequences are painfully real. The impact is already being felt on the ground. According to recent reports, cognac exports to China have dropped by almost 40% in the past 12 months alone. Rémy Cointreau, one of the industry's powerhouses, saw its China sales tumble by nearly 33% in the last quarter of the 2024 to 2025 financial year. For smaller producers who lack the deep financial reserves and global reach of the giants, even a modest decline can be disastrous. The threat of permanent tariffs, potentially reaching as high as 39%, would be nothing short of catastrophic. Industry observers warn that, without a diplomatic breakthrough, the European Union and China could spiral into a full-blown trade war, with far-reaching consequences. Other European exports, from cheeses and fine wines to luxury handbags and high-end watches, could soon find themselves in the crosshairs, while Chinese goods could face even higher barriers in European markets. The dominoes are lined up, and one wrong move could set off a cascade of economic retaliation. What makes the situation even more precarious is the uneven playing field created by China's latest proposal. The offer of a tax refund in exchange for cooperation and adherence to minimum pricing is, in effect, a method of dividing the industry. The largest players, with their vast resources, global distribution networks, and established relationships, are in a position to comply with Beijing's terms and survive the storm. Smaller producers, many of whom have been crafting cognac for generations, are being squeezed out, caught between the competing interests of two economic superpowers and the harsh realities of the global marketplace. The potential for industry consolidation is growing rapidly. If smaller producers are forced out, the landscape of French cognac could shift dramatically, with a handful of multinational giants dominating production and export. The rich tapestry of artisanal knowledge, diverse flavors, and local traditions that has defined cognac for centuries could be irreparably damaged. The drink that once embodied the spirit of regional pride and craftsmanship may become just another commodity, shaped more by the dictates of global trade than the artistry of its makers. Some industry observers have even raised the possibility of an even more profound transformation, the relocation of bottling operations to China itself. While this might sound unthinkable, it is not without precedent. In the wine sector, we have already seen European producers establish joint ventures and bottling facilities in China to better serve local consumers and sidestep trade barriers. If French cognac makers choose this path, the consequences could be far-reaching. The label on your next bottle might still read "Product of France," but the spirit inside may have taken a very different journey, shaped by forces far removed from the rolling hills of cognac. The potential shift of bottling operations to China raises a myriad of concerns, not only about authenticity, but also about quality control, preservation of traditional techniques, and the economic impact on rural French communities. Imagine a scenario where the vineyards of Charente produce the base spirit, but the final blending, aging, and bottling all occur thousands of kilometers away. The unique terroir, the subtle nuances imparted by local wood, air, and centuries-old cellars, these could all be lost or diminished, replaced by industrial processes catering to mass-market tastes. For consumers and investors, these developments are more than just distant diplomatic maneuverings. They offer a valuable lesson in how quickly global supply chains can unravel, and how even the most beloved and iconic products are vulnerable to the shifting winds of politics and trade. If you savor a glass of fine cognac, you may soon find prices soaring, your favorite varieties disappearing, or the character of the drink subtly changing. What was once a familiar indulgence could become a rare luxury, and perhaps a symbol of a vanished era. But the lessons do not stop at cognac. This crisis serves as a wake-up call for anyone with a stake in the global economy. Trade wars, long considered relics of the past, have returned with renewed intensity, fueled by clashing visions of economic power and national interest. The current standoff between the European Union and China is only one front in a much larger contest, one that also encompasses advanced technology, control of critical raw materials, and even environmental policy. The decisions made today will set the tone for decades to come, shaping everything from the jobs we hold to the products we buy and the values our economies reflect. So, what comes next for French cognac and for the broader world of global trade? Several scenarios present themselves, each with its own set of risks and opportunities. In the best-case scenario, negotiators on both sides find common ground, tariffs are lifted, and trade flows resume. Cognac sales bounce back in the Chinese market, small producers survive, and the industry emerges stronger and more resilient. Such a truce could set a positive precedent for resolving other trade disputes, showing that diplomacy and compromise can still work in a polarized world. In the worst-case scenario, however, the stalemate hardens. Permanent tariffs are imposed, both sides dig in, and the industry is forced to adapt to a harsh new reality. Small producers, unable to absorb the costs or navigate the political minefield, are forced to close their doors or sell out to larger competitors. Some may even relocate operations to China, sacrificing tradition for survival. The ripple effects could be felt across the broader European economy, deepening divisions and fueling populist backlash against globalization. A third, and perhaps most likely scenario lies somewhere in between, an uneven playing field, where only the largest and most adaptable survive. The giants of the industry strike side deals, secure tax refunds, and maintain their place in the Chinese market, while their smaller rivals are left behind. The result, a consolidated, less diverse industry, and a lost opportunity to preserve the heritage and craftsmanship that make cognac unique. Behind these scenarios are real people, artisans, vineyard workers, bottlers, marketers, and countless others whose livelihoods rise and fall with the ebb and flow of international trade. Their stories rarely make headlines, but they are the true barometer of the crisis. For every celebrated brand, there are dozens of small family firms whose futures hang in the balance, their legacies threatened by forces far beyond their control. What can be done to protect them? Policymakers in France and Brussels have pledged support, with a spokesperson for the French Commerce Ministry vowing to support the industry and achieve the best possible situation between now and the 5th of July. But words alone will not suffice. Concrete measures, such as direct financial aid, strategic market diversification, and robust legal challenges at the World Trade Organization, will be needed to safeguard the industry and ensure a level playing field. Some experts have suggested exploring alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, or even seeking new markets in Asia, Africa, and the Americas to offset losses in China. Others call for renewed investment in innovation, branding, and digital marketing to help smaller producers reach international consumers directly, bypassing traditional distribution bottlenecks. For those who care about tradition, diversity, and the human stories behind every bottle, this is a pivotal moment. Will small producers find allies and adapt, or will they be swept away by the relentless march of globalization and consolidation? Will the world's most famous brandy remain a symbol of French excellence, or become just another casualty of economic warfare? It is worth remembering that this is not the first existential threat the cognac industry has faced. Over the centuries, it has survived the devastating phylloxera plagues of the 19th century, 2 world wars, prohibition in the United States, and countless market booms and busts. Each crisis has forced adaptation and innovation. New grape varieties were introduced to combat disease, international markets were cultivated to replace lost demand, and modern production techniques were adopted to ensure quality. But the current standoff with China is different. It is a test not just of economic resilience, but of the very values that underpin the industry: authenticity, craftsmanship, and a sense of place. The broader implications are just as profound. The trade standoff between the European Union and China is a sign of our times, a reflection of a world in transition, where old rules no longer apply and new alliances are being forged. Technology, climate change, and evolving consumer preferences are all reshaping the global economy, creating both unprecedented opportunities and formidable risks. Those who can adapt, diversify, and innovate will thrive. Those who cling to the past may struggle to survive in a world that refuses to stand still. For consumers, the takeaway could not be clearer. Pay attention to the stories behind the products you buy and consider the ripple effects of your choices. The next time you raise a glass of cognac, remember the journey it has taken. From the sun-drenched vineyards of Charente, through the tangled web of international trade, all the way to your table. The decisions made by policymakers, business leaders, and ordinary citizens will determine whether that story continues for generations to come or fades into memory. As we watch the clock tick down to the next round of trade negotiations, one thing is certain. The fate of French cognac hangs in the balance, suspended between the competing interests of East and West, tradition and modernity, economic pragmatism, and cultural pride. The outcome will shape not just the future of a single industry, but the broader contours of global trade in the 21st century. And here is a secret that even many seasoned cognac enthusiasts might not know. If bottling operations shift to China, what ends up in your glass may no longer be truly French, even if the label says so. That is a sobering thought for anyone who values tradition, taste, and authenticity. So, if you want to stay ahead of these global shifts, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of how economics and technology are reshaping the world we live in. And let us know in the comments below, do you believe small producers can weather this trade storm, or is the age of the artisan spirit drawing to a close? Your perspective